Hello and welcome to Chloe Harriet. I am of course Chloe and today we are going to talk about my top standout books of 2019. Little disclaimer because I noticed in my last video, when I film over here, the chair I sit on, it's really squeaky. So in case you heard that noise in my last video or can hear it now, I was like, what the fuck is that? Sorry for the language. You can hear the noise. Sorry. I'll try not to squeak my chair too much. Today I thought I would go over the books which were my kind of favourites or the ones which have stuck with me that I've read in 2019. Although I read quite a lot, I am quite a slow reader, so according to my Goodreads I've read 30 books in 2019. FYI, aim for 2020 is 35, so we're going to try and up it. Also, before I get onto the video, I just thought I'd say if you are interested in books, I'm launching the Chloe Harriet's book club. I'm launching the Chloe Harriet's Book Club of 2020. There's a post live on my blog already with all the books we're reading. I've decided to stick to one book a month because I thought two just might put people off and it maybe was a bit too much for some people, or like people have other things they want to read, they don't necessarily want me to decide everything they're reading. So I would love for you to get involved. You could head over to my blog chloeharriet.com to read the full post, and the first book we're reading, which a lot of people have already read, I'm just really late to the party, is Normal People by Sally Rooney. That is the first book we are reading. So if you have read it, I'd love to discuss it with you. I'm currently just under halfway through. That is a January book, so please get involved. Each of the books I will be reviewing at the end of the month or the start of the next month on my blog, and I'll discuss them on Instagram because everyone loves to chat on Instagram. Also, while we're at it, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, I'm at Chloe Harriet. Just follow me over there just to keep up to date with my life. Thanks. I am going to try and film this fairly quick because I'm a bit of an idiot. I started filming at 3 o'clock and it gets late pretty early here, so not late. That makes no sense. It gets dark pretty early here, so it's getting darker as I'm filming this, which isn't ideal for lighting. Right, let's get on to the video. A little FYI, I have not refreshed my memory on any of these books, so hopefully I can remember what happened to them, but I just literally looked through my Goodreads and all the books which stood out the most to me I just picked up off my bookshelf and kind of took note of them. Before I talk about any physical books, I'm going to talk about the ones which are made the list but I don't have to show you because I listened to them on an audiobook or read them on my Kindle. So the first is Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. Now I'm not going to talk about this a lot because I know a lot of people have already read it and a lot of people have already talked about it, but I really liked this book. It was very gripping, it was a very interesting story, the characters were very interesting. I liked the contrast between the two families. The story begins with a fire that's been started in a wealthy family's house and they all blame one of the children who lives in the house, and then it goes back and tells the story of how the fire got caused and what caused the fire. It revolves around two families. One is a wealthy family with quite a few children and a like traditional marriage, and the other is a single mum with just the one daughter who rents property from the wealthy family. One family have traditional jobs and the single mum is an artist. So it's two very contrasting families. There's a lot in there about class. All the characters are really interesting. The story is really interesting. There's a lot in it. You kind of get to know each character in a different way. It's just really good. There's also a lot of backstory and it all kind of links together. It's very well thought out. You learn about each character's, how they became to be what they are and their past and what has led them to who they are. There's a lot in there about adoption and ownership over children as well, which I thought was really interesting. Just really good read, a lot of depth to it, a lot in it. The story is really interesting. It's very clever how it all connects. It's one of those books which feels like there's lots of little stories in one and then they all link, but they all revolve around the same characters. Really worth reading, I would recommend strongly. The next book I want to talk about, which I don't have to hand, is, what is it? Is After by Anna Todd. that entire series. Now, I spoke about this a lot on my blog, so I'll link any blog posts that I talk about that book, or actually any of the others, down below. So After by Anna Todd was apparently written as Harry Styles fan fiction. Little disclaimer, I bloody love Harry Styles, but I did not know that when I read it. I found that out afterwards. So it was originally written as Harry Styles fan fiction, so you can kind of guess what kind of style. It's going to be very young adult and a lot of sexual references. I ended up reading this book because I watched the film on Netflix. So there's a film on Netflix, and then I was very curious when I saw that there was a book. After is about a very toxic relationship, and there's a series. I think there's 4 or 5 books, and I read them all, and I enjoyed them all as well. The last one maybe not so much because it was just the first book in a different perspective. There's a lot to say. So it's about the characters Tessa and Hardin, who meet at university. They're both from, well, college because they're American. They're both from very different backgrounds. He's a bit of a bad boy and she is extremely sheltered. He's also English, and he has more of a bad group of friends. So she meets him because her roommate is friends with him, and then they get together, they fall in love. As the series goes on, it's just about their relationships. As a few books into the series, you kind of learn more about their backgrounds, and the stories kind of widen out beyond just those 2 characters. But the first book is definitely more based around those 2. Now, their relationship is not good, it's very toxic, but you kind of find yourself rooting for it. The book definitely doesn't do a very good job of showing what a healthy relationship is, I'll say that. But it's really interesting. The character's really interesting. Hardin in particular, the main male character, I found really interesting. It was one of those books I found I couldn't put it down, and it kind of felt a bit Twilight to me, reading it, because I could tell the relationship was toxic. I could tell I shouldn't want these characters to be together, and I could also tell that it wasn't that well written. But I couldn't stop reading it, and I read the whole series really, really quickly because I just couldn't put it down because I was so invested in finding out what happened with these characters. I'd say I'd recommend it because I obviously enjoyed it if I couldn't put it down, but also go in it with an open mind because I definitely don't justify that kind of toxic relationship. And both the characters, at some point you want to punch them in the face because they're just both idiots, and they both don't seem that capable of having a healthy adult relationship. But like I said, I couldn't put it down nonetheless. The third book I want to discuss, which I don't have to hand, is Becoming by Michelle Obama. Now, I listened to it on an audiobook. I don't often listen to an audiobook, but I decided to with this one because I'd heard that it was a great to listen to on an audiobook, because she is the narrator on the audiobook, which I think definitely gives it extra depth. And hearing the story in her voice is really interesting. Michelle Obama, Barack Obama's wife, so she was the First Lady, and it is her memoir, and it's about her upbringing and about life in the White House and about where she came from and what she became, and it's just really, really good. She has a really interesting way of writing. It's easy to follow and relatable and feels very intelligent when you read it. It's very interesting to read. You can tell that she's a well-educated lady and she's got a lot of life experience. It's really interesting to hear about life in the White House, definitely, because I'm sure, like me, like a normal person, you probably don't know that much about that world. I definitely didn't before I read the book. But what I liked the most about it was hearing about where she came from and life before she met Barack. I found that really, really interesting. It's just really interesting to hear the past of somebody who's kind of seen in the public eye and you expect not to have an ordinary upbringing. One part of it which really stuck out to me, and I'm not sure why, but there's a part where she talks about learning to play the piano. Now, she was from a working class family and she was taught piano, I think, by a neighbour. I can't really remember, it was quite a long time ago I listened. And the keys on the piano, the one which you start with, I think, is it a C? I can't remember. The one which you start with to find every other key had a chip on it, where it was a really old piano because her piano teacher was also quite working class. So she could always find it. She didn't realise that was why she could find it. And then when it came to her piano performance, her first performance, she felt really ready, and then she got there and it was a shiny new piano, and suddenly she was terrified. I found that really interesting. In the end, her piano teacher just came and put her finger in the correct place so she knew where to start. But I found that story, for some reason, it just really stuck with me. I found that really interesting to see the background she was from. I didn't know much about Michelle Obama. I didn't know she was from a working class background in Chicago. I wasn't aware of that. I didn't know how unlikely it was for her to end up in the position she did end up. So I really enjoyed that, and yeah, she's a very wise woman, and I'd definitely be interested in reading more that she's written because I love her style of writing. Okay, now onto the books I have the physical books of. There aren't very many because, like I said, I've just picked out the ones which really stood out to me. The Rules Do Not Apply by Ariel Levy. Levy? I have this problem every time. I've spoken about this a million times. I read it early last year, and I think I've referred back to it quite a few times in different videos and blog posts and stuff, so they will all definitely be linked down below. But this is a memoir by the New Yorker writer Ariel Levy, and it's really, really good. So it tells the story of the breakdown of her marriage, it tells some story of her travelling, it just tells the story of some tragedies in her life and how they came to be and the situation she's found herself in. It's just a very, very brave, raw, honest, vulnerable book, and I loved the style of writing. I found it relatable and interesting, and I didn't want to put it down, and I felt so heartbroken by reading her experience. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I don't really, there's one of those books I feel like if I say too much it will kind of ruin it, but it's definitely, if you're into a memoir and you want something which is going to kind of tug on your heartstrings, definitely is worth a read. Next I got this is Essays in Love by Alain de Botton. Now this is the first of his writing I have read, and it's incredible. It's unlike anything I have ever read before. His writing is such a bizarre combination of fictional and philosophical. So it tells a fictional story of a couple who fall in love, and you follow them through the entirety of their relationship. But rather than telling a fictional story, it's kind of split into essays. So we'll tell their story, but then also a philosophical essay on love. It's very hard to explain. It's really interesting though. So there's a chapter on skepticism and faith. What do you see in her? Speaking love, and they're all essays but telling a story at the same time. It's very intelligent. I will say you need brain power to read it. You can't read it half asleep. Like, you need to really be in the mood to focus on it, and it deserves that focus as well. It's very clever, it's very well written, really, really intelligent, good writing, and it will get you thinking about love and what love really is and all of its complications. Because I have this is Going to Hurt by Adam Kay. I know a lot of people have read this. I whizzed through this and I bloody loved it. So This Is Going to Hurt is the diaries of a junior doctor. The writer tells the story of when he was a doctor working in the NHS, and it's literally diary entries he wrote at the time. Some of them are funny, some of them are heartbreaking. All of them are interesting. His writing is humorous but tender when it needs to be. It's really special. It makes you appreciate what the NHS does for us. We're very lucky to have it in this country. It makes you appreciate all that they do for us. It makes you realise how much doctors go through on a daily basis and how much their patients go through, and how people need to stop putting things up their bums, to be quite honest. There's a lot of really funny articles about patients who have come in and kind of lied and I've fallen on this, I've fallen on that, and they didn't fall. So that's funny. There are sad parts as well. They're definitely really sad parts. The writing is good, the writing is honest, the writing is funny. There are little footnotes as well which kind of explain any terms you wouldn't know, and there's also humour in the footnotes which I appreciate. When I say explain anything you would know, I mean like any medical terms. Next I have this, One Day by David Nichols. I'm sure a lot of you have seen the film of this, and I've definitely spoken about it before. A lot of you may have read the book. So One Day is the story of Emma and Dexter, we meet just when they're leaving college, and the book follows them through one day every year for how many years? Can't remember how many years. 30 years, something like that. So it's the same day every chapter is the same date but a year later, and it follows the two characters and it shows kind of all the phases of their relationship, their friendship, their falling in love, all the tragedies that happen in their life. It's really good, it's really well written, the characters are relatable and interesting. I'm not going to say too much because I'm sure everyone's seen the film Anne Hathaway. And the last book I've got here, which was a standout for me, is How to Fail by Elizabeth Day. I really enjoyed this book. I think it came to me in a time that I needed it. I was feeling right down, feeling like I'd failed a lot, and I read that book and it was what I needed. It's simply a memoir on everything the writer learned from failing. Elizabeth Day is a journalist. She's very successful. On the surface, her life looks very successful, but then in the book it kind of goes into failures. I find that word really hard to say. She's experienced and how she's come out the other side from a broken marriage, infertility, failing at a driving test, failing at friendships. It's very relatable. We all fail, and it's nice for someone to be searching for the positives in that. It's really well written, really relatable, just really damn good, and I would recommend it. Okay, those are all of the books I read in, not all the books I read in 2019, those are the standout books I read in 2019, so the ones I thought were just worth giving an extra little mention. Let me know if you have read any of those. If you're interested in what other books I read during 2019, I am going to do a full blog post with all of them listed, and I will link any blog posts or videos where I talk about the books and all that jazz, so you can find out more there. I also have a Goodreads account, so if you want to follow me in there, I'll link it down below and you can keep up with what I'm reading this year. Please let me know your book recommendations, what you're reading. If you're not subscribed already, please do. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you very soon. Sending you good vibes. Bye.